Hey guys, I want to talk about lightning photography a little bit because it's one of my favorite things. And the other day I posted a photo on Twitter of a lightning bolt that I had just missed. And it had appeared just kind of on the left side of my frame. I didn't get everything, and said something about how much I love shooting with the 50, but I missed it. And someone said, oh, that's why you shoot with a wide angle, then you can just crop it. And it kind of got me thinking about that and kind of the differences between shooting wide, shooting with something like a 50, because my favorite lightning lens, or, you know, a 35, an 85, or 135. But I kind of picked the 50 because that's the one I like to shoot with the most. There's definitely a difference between a wide angle shot and shooting with a 50, and there can be problems with each of them. The problem with a 50 is it's a pretty tight frame depending on where the lightning is or the storm is in relation to where you are, and it leads to misses. Wide angle, you might have less misses, but then the lightning might appear on the edges of your frame, get distorted. You might have more problems with chromatic aberrations and fringing. 50 millimeter prime, a lot sharper. So I was going to talk about some of these shots, go through some examples of kind of the differences and the problems. And, you know, this isn't really a video of, oh, you should shoot with a 50 or you should shoot with a wide. It's just kind of showing you the differences, what you can do with each, and why you might want to use a wide instead of a 50, or vice versa. So one of the first photos I wanted to talk about, and this is just a prime example of, here's a 50 millimeter shot that I missed. Half the lightning, part of the lightning is off the edge of the frame here, which kind of turns a shot like this unusable for me. I don't like things going off frame. It kind of leads you, I don't know, kind of makes you feel like you're missing something. So I also shot it with a wide, because I usually shoot with 2 or 3 cameras, time-lapsing, stills, whatever. And so I also have a wide angle shot of it. Did I get it? I still missed it, but let's just say, for example, that bolt on the very far right around here had made it in frame. This overall isn't a horrible shot. I actually really like it with the stars and all that. But as you can see between these two shots, the lightning here straight up and down, power line straight up and down, wide angle 11 millimeters. The lightning is very bent over, and as you get closer to the edge, it's going to be that way. You can fix with it a little bit, you can tweak with it, but it's never going to give you the same look as the straight up and down 50 millimeter lens did. And so for me, when I'm shooting wide, I still want the lightning strike to hit somewhere in the middle, you know, 2/3 of the frame, middle half of the frame, if you will, as opposed to the edges. Because even though it's on the edge, someone said, you know, hey, you can just crop it if you shoot a wide angle shot, just crop it. But the crop is still going to leave some things that are undesirable. And the lightning is still going to be further away. You're going to end up with a little bit more chromatic aberrations because it's a wide angle lens, and some distortion that you can fix, but it's never going to, you know, you're never just going to fix this perfectly to be straight up and down. Here's another example. This is a finished shot from Montana, and it's not horrible. I like this shot a lot. But as you can see, the trees are leaning over, some of the power lines are leaning over. This is a shot where this is the same shot where I kind of tried to fix it a little bit, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. I really like this, but you can just kind of see that this lightning strike is probably not as bent over, leaning to the left, as it could have been if you had a 50. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this shot, and I was actually really stoked about this. This storm was moving fast, and just to capture that lightning in frame was pretty cool, so it didn't bother me. And I also don't care about things that are like leaning over too much. If it's a little bit too much on the edges, I might Photoshop out a power line or something that's leaning way over. You know, the one that I was pointing at the beginning, these are leaning way over. I may Photoshop some of that out so it doesn't look so bad. But I don't mind it, you know, being a little bit, you know, distorted on the edges. If it's, you know, especially on this shot, the lightning's not all the way to the edge. It's still kind of, you know, it's more, it's away from the edge enough that it doesn't look so bad. And a wide angle shot is cool. I love it. Here's another example of a very wide angle, 14 millimeter. Truck is perfect, but you can see on the right over here, the people were kind of leaned over a little bit. Not too bad, but this lightning bolt strikes off camera, and we don't get the whole thing even with 14 millimeters. But, there's no way this lightning strike was that leaned over like that. We're looking way up high at the top of the cloud, and it does go off to the left. It's a positive strike. It strikes well away from this rain shaft here. But if I had been shooting maybe this side of the frame with a 50, it would probably have been an incredible lightning strike. But it doesn't discount this photo. It's just two different things, right? One wide angle shot gives you like this crazy scene here. You got my truck, you got us on this side, you got this lightning bolt that is just exploding out of the storm and landing off frame so far away. It's a very kind of unique, cool shot. But if I had a 50 on the other side, it would have been a different shot, and I would have had the whole bolt. It might have had a little bit of a different perspective. It wouldn't have been so bent over. It would have been a little more straight up and down. And as I'll go over later, you get a lot of details with those primes, like a 50 or an 85 or a 135 that you might not get with a wide. Now here's a sample of, hey, I shot this with the 50, and it would have been real nice, but I missed it a little bit. It's a little bit too far on the left side of my frame. And this is a 50, and then I also shot it at 24, and here the 24 caught the whole thing. And this isn't ultra wide. This wasn't shooting at 14 because the storm was a decent ways away. But as much as I love this shot, and there's nothing wrong with it, I do really like it. It could have been even cooler had I caught it with the 50 that close. This entire thing with the 50. The lightning would have filled the frame. It would have had a little bit more details in all the filaments, maybe less chromatic aberrations. Nothing wrong with this though. I like it. It's just two different styles. Here's a great example of shooting very wide, 15 millimeter wide shot. This is one of my favorite lightning strikes ever, so of course I'm going to show this one. But this is where a wide angle was a must. You had this storm, the bolts were coming so close, you had to shoot wide because as close as the storm was getting to us, we knew the bolts were going to be closer. And with a 50 with this storm, I would have missed the entire structure of this. You got the whole downburst here, you got the clouds above it, you see where the rain is just crashing down. I wanted all of this in my frame, and then I got lucky enough to capture a super close lightning strike about a quarter mile away, landing right there. And a wide angle was absolutely necessary for the shot. A 50 would have totally been way too much of a crop, and you would have missed. I would have missed so much. And if the bolt is this close, you're going to get all kinds of details in the filaments. It's going to look great on a wide angle no matter what. Another sample of this. This is a 14 millimeter shot, and this is in Montana this past spring, and it was almost a necessity to get this because this storm had put out a positive bolt where you can see here it comes out the very top of the storm and comes down well away from where the rain was out behind this. And so for a wide angle, it was kind of important. And the other thing is that the bolts were kind of landing on the other side of this mountain here. And so for me, if I was to use a 50 and be a close crop to this shot, I wouldn't see where the bolt landed, which would kind of annoy me anyway. So getting a wide angle shot of the whole storm kind of, made me not so worried about not seeing the landing points of the bolts. So here was very cool because not only is it wide, but the bolt landed very close to the center of the frame. And so that took care of whatever distortion might happen. And I also got the top of the cloud. I got the entire bolt here, even though, it came out of the top and this one strike, this little filament stretching upwards, I still get it all in frame, and I was able to get the road. Very cool. So that's where the wide angles are very, very important, and just another method. Sometimes you want to use them. Sometimes a 50 is nice. Here's a 50 millimeter shot. It's a great strike. I had two cameras set up here, so I'll show you the next one. But this was great. You could see with the 50 that there's a lot of detail here. You can make out the saguaro. You can see the lights. All these little filaments. You can make out so many details in this. So if this bolt had been a little extra special, maybe another one crashing down here, it would have been a spectacular shot with the 50. But the wide angle shot of this at 15 millimeters is way cooler because you can see the 50 got just this part of this entire strike. So I would have missed all of this if I'd only been shooting with a 50. So in this situation, obviously a wide angle, way better. I like both. I posted both. I thought both were keepers. Different versions of the same strike. I liked it, but this one you can see where the bolt comes out the top of the storm and just comes crashing down right here, in less than about a mile or two away from where we were. And there's a total of 5 strikes here and 1 in the distance. So another important wide angle purpose. And here's another one. This bolt struck just across the freeway here. You can see the trails going by of Interstate 10, and another kind of positive strike that came out the top of the storm and landed out here. But on the left, you can see this other bolt in the distance where the actual rain and stuff were kind of coming out, although there is some here too. This bolt is very bent over, looks distorted, looks very weak in the distance. Not as cool as this one does very close. So I had a wide angle shot here in hopes that a big bolt was going to come out, and I got really lucky, so that worked out. Now, if I had used a 50 millimeter, I would have gotten something like this, which in and of itself wouldn't have been that bad either. It's just a different strike. I may not have liked all the stuff in the way with the 50, but with the wide, it really, really works. Now here's 2 very similar shots because I was shooting one with a 35 on my Sony, and then I believe this was a time lapse at 50 with one of my Canons. Now, wide angle shot's not so bad, but I feel like if I zoom into this with the 35 millimeter, which is not really that wide, but it's just a different perspective here, it looks fine. It's a little bit weaker. Now, if I go with the 50, this one, the details in here, kind of back and forth, the details just look a little bit better. It's sharper, it's nicer. It's also the 5DSR with the 50 millimeter one too. It's very sharp combination. I like the fact that most of this bolt was all captured in frame. I didn't really have to crop that much. This one, I felt like I would probably crop. I didn't know that the rest of this was that interesting to me. So here, I'm happier to have a tighter crop. This one worked out a little bit better. Another one, just 2 different samples. This shot is pretty cool. Lightning strike by itself, you can see it coming through the cloud here. It's there's a little moonbow here. You can see this little rainbow. I don't know if you can make it out on the screencast here, but there's a little moonbow happening right here. You can see some color. So this really close-up shot isn't very nice with the 50. However, the wide-angle shot, it's great. It reveals that it was a positive strike, again, coming out the top of the storm and slamming into the ground. So, you make out some stars above it. It's a very cool shot. 2 totally different shots. 150, not so bad. Wide angle, kind of cool. Now, another example. I'll do 2 more examples, then I'll just show you some shots that I really like. Here's a 50 millimeter shot at sunset. This is pretty cool. I actually had someone want this converted to black and white, and they bought it and they hung up in their house. Huge, pretty crazy. But they actually like this one more than the wide angle shot I'll show you. But this is very tight, and there's cool colors, and this isn't really edited. I haven't really edited it for kind of posting online. But the wide angle shot reveals all this color, the sky. There's actually stars over here on the left with the sunset colors over here. So the wide angle shot is actually my favorite one because it's just there's a lot of interesting things going on. Even though the lightning is kind of smaller in the frame with the sunset, the color, the stars, I like it better than this one. That's just the way this one kind of worked out for me. However, here's another example of this was a 50 millimeter actually, so not really wide, but I was shooting with the 50 and I was also shooting with the 135. So 2 totally different perspectives. The 135 misses some of the bolts on the right here, like these bolts over here. It's missing the one on the very far right and this partial one right here. However, I do love how much I can see the detail of it hitting this rock formation, which is a giant rock, giant hill, and then also some of the details here hitting the ground and right behind that mountain. This one, it's still pretty good. There's nothing wrong with it. However, it's just a little bit further away. I don't necessarily care about the clouds on the top. So I really liked this tighter crop just to kind of show it. I feel like it with the lightning filling the frame, there's more power there than the wider shot. And so that's kind of why I like the 50 or closer zoomed lenses, I guess. Not zoom, but a tighter lens, from 50 to 135 on lightning. I don't know, the feeling of that power of the bolts filling up the frame is very cool. Here's another one from this year, one of my favorites of 2018. Could have shot this really wide, but I liked kind of compressing all these cactus here, and I got really lucky with a close strike as it was moving towards us that filled the whole frame up at 50, and it just kind of it makes you feel the lightning more. It makes the lightning more the star of the show. I feel like I see more landing points. I see more details in lightning strikes when I use the 50. For example, this one is one of my favorite shots. If you zoom in here, there's it's hard to see here, but there's a little upward streamer on the right of this. I don't think I'd ever see that if I had shot this at a wide angle. There's just, no way. It would have to really, really stand out. So this one, yeah, man, I wish I would have had my camera panned over a little bit more to the right, because it looks like there's a lot of action going on over here. I missed another great strike, but there's something just incredible about having an entire frame filled up with lightning. And so it's a different perspective. I shot this at 11 millimeter, probably would have looked pretty spectacular, but I bet it would have lacked maybe some of the power that this shot has. And here's just another 135. Lightning was kind of coming around these mountains. I knew the 50 wasn't enough because I was too far away, so brought out the 135. So you can really kind of just see mountains, rain, and lightning. Very simple. If I shot the 50, I might have had a few more elements in there that I didn't want, some distractions, and I like this simplistic nature of this photo. And then finally, this last one, which I think I had up at the very beginning. Again, this was just a 135 because the storm was a little bit further away, and it's just another sample of a frame full of electricity and how much of a feel of power you get from that. So I don't know if that really kind of helps a little bit in kind of thinking about two different ways of shooting. But for me, I'm going to do both. I like to shoot with multiple cameras, so I'm going to capture both. If I was standing in front of these storms and had one camera, that's where the decision making would come in. Do I want to shoot this wide? Do I want to shoot this with a 50? And so this little screencast hopefully will help you kind of figure out, if the whole storm is interesting, I take one test shot at wide angle, I really like this entire storm. So if I get a lightning strike, it'll just be a bonus. Or the rest of it's kind of boring, I really want to zoom in and get nothing but lightning. So hopefully this is kind of like a good tutorial on the differences between the two. So distortion on the edges of your frame, if your lightning is too much on the edges, maybe a little less detail with those wide angles, more chances at fringing and chromatic aberrations. However, more of a chance of catching everything, more of a chance of seeing the bigger picture if it's a very cool scene, especially those bolts that come out the top of storms, kind of important. The tighter lenses, the 50s and upwards, more detailed in your frames, sharper a lot of times with those primes, more a chance just to focus on the lightning itself, and probably less issues with chromatic aberrations and distortion especially, but fringing and stuff like that. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. If you have any questions or even things that you think I got wrong, please hit in the comments. I'm always learning. I feel like I do this enough that I kind of know what's going on, but I'm not necessarily a super technical person. So a lot of stuff I do is just based off feel. So if you have better ways, I know there's ways you can probably fix distortion more. It's not necessarily something I like to take the time to do, but that's out there. So if you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comment section, email me, whatever you want to do. But thanks for watching, and hopefully I will do a few more of these in the near future.